You are now live, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Hello, everybody. Welcome to tonight's strategy and performance meeting. We've got any substitutes, please?
Yes, we have, Chair. We have got Councillor Curtin, who is substituting for Councillor Thornber, and Councillor Bellinger substituting for Councillor Parsons-Hulse. Both Councillor Parsons-Hulse and Councillor Thornber have sent their apologies.
Right, okay, thank you. I think Amanda's got COVID, I think, hasn't she? Admission to the public, I think they're okay to come, but I'm not nobody here is there. Unless they're listening in. Oh, not like this. Has there any chance to read the minutes of the last meeting? I mean, I don't know about anybody else, but I thought they were excellent. There was a lot of information in there. And it was pretty reflective of what went on. It was, I don't know, it just seemed exceptionally detailed. I don't know who did them, but whoever it was, thanks very much. Congratulations. Thank you, Janet. They're very good, those. Is everybody happy with them?
Chair, can I just say that Janet should do minutes for all meetings now based on that?
Have you agree, Mike? It's
absolutely, yes. Yeah.
They're absolutely cock on, aren't they? Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, thanks, Janet.
No, thank you.
Right, we'll move on to the, if everyone's happy with the minutes, we'll move on to the first item. Zonra, unfortunately, due to family matters abroad, has had to give notice, short notice, which having some problems getting in abroad with a constant problem at airports. So I think Alan Lee and Craig Trewilden are going to take this. Is that right? Are you too aware of that? I ain't dropping you in it, am I? You are aware. You are aware you're doing it. Okay. Well, I'll just let you fire away if that's all right. Just present it, and then we'll just take questions if that's all right.
Okay, thanks, Chair. I'm happy to lead off if that's okay.
Yeah, fine.
Two things. As you've already said, I'm not Zora, so apologies for that. But secondly, if you look at my camera and listen to my voice, I think I'm out of sync. If that puts you off, I'm more than happy to turn my camera off. What I'm not going to do is I'm not going to look at it because it puts me off. So, as I say, more than happy to turn the camera off if that's off-putting. So,
it don't bother me. Yeah.
Okay.
Whatever you wish.
Yeah. Just a few words by way of introduction. You'll see that this item comes to you at a very early formative stage because we're in transition. The People, Assets and Systems programme has brought together oversight of a range of change programmes across the organisation, which have been delivered as part of our recovery process to make sure that we focus on the right things, that we join up and add value where we can, and that we use our resources efficiently and effectively. This approach has successfully guided us through our recovery phase, and it's delivered some notable developments, many supporting our new working arrangements while continuing to focus on employee wellbeing during a very difficult time. I'll come back to employee wellbeing. For example, the major redesign and reset of the space allocated and agreed through the workplace office accommodation strategy has been completed and is operational. The overall approach seems to have gone smoothly, which would suggest it's been easy. We shouldn't underestimate the scale of that change. But we're now at a point where it's time to reset and consider the next phase of our journey, and that's the juncture that we're at tonight, Chair. So what you'll see, well, I'll come on to there are two documents in the bundle. It's worth making reference to, although again, this is at an even earlier stage, a people board has been established, and that's going to oversee wider people issues across the organisation, but that's not yet met. It's scheduled to have its first meeting on Friday. It's expected that that board will feed into the overall work programme for the People, Assets and Systems programme, but that will become clearer over the next period. As I say, it's not yet met. There are two documents in your papers. The first one that sets out the key drivers, the principles and the proposed approach, and the second one that serves as a bit of an example of one area of focus, which is looking at how our governance arrangements and how they might operate going forward. So, as I say, early formative stage, today is an opportunity to hear your thoughts about the proposed approach, the principles set out in the first document, and any areas of activity that you think we might focus on. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Alan. So this is kind of Future Council Part 2, is it? Is it just continuation of where we set off with the beginning of COVID, where we restructured all the offices and reduced the desk numbers and stuff. Is this like a kind of review of that with how it works in the future, or is it something different?
So the Future Council was a particular programme that looks at the range of services that we provide, and it took some decisions about discontinuing certain services, growing other areas of activity. So that was almost a precursor. That was during the kind of early post-COVID recovery. The past programme looked at the kind of the range of changes that we were going through, and as a result of the kind of post-pandemic period, and that's the work we've done over the last probably 18 months or so. Now we're at a point now we could no longer refer to recovery. We're kind of resetting and looking at where we go from here. So it's almost a kind of a third phase from the Future Council programme, Chair.
Right, okay, thank you. Craig, do you want to add anything to that, or should I just go to questions?
No, I think Alan's covered the key points, but if there's any questions come my way, then obviously happy to answer.
Fine, okay. Open to the floor. Anybody got any questions or queries or concerns? Mike?
Tricky question. What will success look like?
Thanks. Yeah, if you look at the document, the first document that sets out the overall approach, there are a number of principles set out in there. So, and I'd probably make reference to those. It's about improving outcomes for our residents. It's about reducing inequalities. It's about delivering our corporate priorities.
I understand that, Alan, but what are the specific measures related to that? Because we can all say we are going to do this. How are we going to be able to judge that that measure has been met and been successful? Is what I'm getting at.
Right. So if you talk about metrics, you're talking about performance indicators, talk about quantifiable figures. Is that what you're saying, Councillor Barnes?
Yeah, because we can make subjective comments about that until we're blue in the face. But it's actually we need it's the evidence that will support that I'm looking at.
Yeah. So that brings me back to we're at a stage now where we're deciding what the areas of focus will be. So what are we going to focus on? What is it we're hoping to achieve? Once we decide what it is we're hoping to achieve, then we can look at what our current performance is, we'll look at what our targets need to be, and then we can look at the milestones that get us there. We're not at the stage yet for setting targets or indicators because we haven't yet defined the scope of the work. There's a broad set of principles here, which is what the range of activity is about. But we need to move to the next stage, which is kind of a degree of granularity, which is about, right, so what are we specifically going to look? So, for example, if I take a broad area, employee well-being, well, if employee well-being works well, what does that look like? Well, surely that's going to impact on our sickness absence. So is it going to look, if we look at our kind of financial controls, budget setting process, so it's the specifics that will need to be determined from which then we can start to look at, right, so how do we measure and quantify progress and success? But until we've defined the scope of the work, and that's the stage that we're at now, the measures flow from the areas of focus.
Okay. Is that all right, Mike?
Yeah, I might have something else, but I've noticed Paul's got his hand up, so I'll just defer to Councillor Bellinger for the moment.
Oh, where are you?
I might come back. I'm thinking.
No, you're great. Charles, come back. Paul Bellinger, have you? I couldn't see her hand at the top of the screen, so I couldn't see her.
It's all right, Chair. No, thank you. I've only had the opportunity to sort of look at this last thing today because I've only, it was last minute decision to cover this. I think it's great. I mean, it's something that our emergency planning sort of team have done in the past with various things. It's all about sustainability of the authority when things actually take place, and obviously we've nothing to compare it with either. So it's a first time, I suppose, for this, and obviously learning by the mistakes or what we've sort of come across as and when it actually happens. I think one of the points I wanted to make here is that because of the different directorates that we've got within the authority, it's all about pulling them all together as well, isn't it? And creating some sort of manual at the end of the day. So in future, we might not be there, or other officers that's with us now might not be there, but whoever's in charge later on down the line, if something happens again, that manual's there in front of them as to what works, what doesn't work, and what they need to do. and you know, and it'd be good to actually see that in place that covers absolutely everything. One of the things I'm a little bit mindful of really is going to our residents, and it's how we actually identify the vulnerable residents within Calderdale as well, and actually keep on top of that, because obviously every year somebody becomes vulnerable. So it's how do we actually identify that and able to sort of like deal with them if something actually happens. So they're sort of like my points really on this.
Okay, no, that's fine. I mean, I have to say, probably following on from that, probably a bit following from what Mike said a bit. I noticed the word residents appears once in the narrative, but systems, staff and organisation appears numerous occasions. So when we talk about outcomes, I mean, is this about internal workings, or is it about actually public service delivery, which is should be our prime focus? Now, I don't know what, I mean, obviously I don't expect to consult the public, but are we going to look at how this affects residents? Because that's what we're here for, really. And all this should come together, really, for service delivery.
I'm happy to come in on that one. So, I mean, a lot of this work is how, like I said, mentioned the governance, how it's linking into the cabinet priorities, how it's going to link into the vision, and it's almost like, as mentioned, one of them principles is how we deliver on them core principles. So if we're looking at reducing inequalities, so I work on some of the digital inequality work, but we've got obviously fuel poverty, we've got all kinds of different levels of poverty there, and it's about how we make sure the organisation is fit to be able to deliver on those priorities. So a bit like Councillor Barnes said, we can say we're going to reduce inequality, but the organisation has to be configured and have the right governance and support from members all the way down to, you know, junior officers to actually deliver that. So absolutely, residents are absolutely at the core of what we're doing, but we've got to make sure, in order to deliver for residents, we've got to make sure the organisation is configured and set up to do that. So, and that a lot of that is around culture. You know, a lot of the work we're doing is around when we're designing services, we've got to make sure we're designing with the customer in mind. Quite often people find a solution, but haven't really defined the problem. So a lot of the workings is around the culture, making sure we're actually looking at the problems before we start to find solutions. So going back to the other document, there's that kind of governance structure there to kind of say, look, you know, these are the priorities for the residents, businesses of Calderdale. It's a partnership working as well. So we've obviously mentioned how we're kind of linking in with people. You know, we're also linked into the integrated care system, all the changes in the old CCG. So it's kind of this kind of golden thread, really. You know, we need to get the organisation configured in order to deliver those priorities for the residents. So it's that kind of continual improvement. You know, that Councillor Bellinger mentioned, you know, it's some of the challenges of the past, what can we improve on, what we're already doing well in certain areas. So there's obviously corporate peer reviews, there's cabinet priorities. So it's kind of making sure all these are linked in and we're not having lots of different projects and in isolation, and how we bring all that together to make sure we deliver for residents.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes we get confused because what we think residents want and what residents actually want, don't we? I think occasionally we're guilty of that, but no, that's fine. Thanks, Greg. Any more questions? Mike, did you want to come back on anything or no? Oh, Victoria.
Yes, Chair, but there's a few others before me.
Right, okay. Victoria.
Stuart was ahead of me.
Right, sorry, I can't see how you're flagging up, so it must be waving. I can't see you. Sorry, Stuart. You want to put in first?
Little hands up. Can you see little?
Perhaps, Chair, you confused Stuart. Perhaps, Chair, you confused Stuart and myself, but that's another issue entirely.
I may well have done that. Well, I can see the top of his head. Yeah. Does that help?
Thanks, Chair. Well, how I tended to kind of look at this, because there's a section in the sort of like cover sheet that says the scrutiny board is to consider if there's any areas of focus to be considered for inclusion in this development plan. So, I mean, I don't know whether I'm coming at this from the right angle or not, but in the key principles, number 6 says that we intervene early to tackle the root causes of issues rather than symptoms and, you know, that sort of stuff. So, one thing that's probably affecting every ward in the borough is fly tipping. Now, obviously, the symptom is the rubbish landing on on council land or whatever. and it's to do with the behaviour of, well, the bad behaviour of, either residents or people that are coming into the area to get rid of the rubbish. So to me, if I would want, fly tipping to be a particular area of focus, then number 6, intervening early to tackle the root cause, that's probably going to be really difficult. It's probably something that, the council's been trying to change for a long time. So, I mean, am I coming at this the right angle? I mean, is that something, am I making a request to say, right, let's make fly tipping a particular area of concern, apply these principles? But as I say, that number 6 could be quite difficult. But
yeah. I don't know. Do you want to take that, Alan, or Craig?
I think these are kind of overarching principles. So the view on the governance would be, from cabinet, from members, there would be an agreed almost governance around what these core priorities are. And if fly tipping or general environmental nuisance was defined as that, then it's about how we look at the root causes, all that kind of work. So a lot of this is around making sure we're drawing information from a range of different sources. It's not the assumptions of the council of what's going wrong. It's really, getting at that information early and trying to intervene. So that is a principle, that should be applied to any of the priorities that is defined by the council. But this is about the PAS group making sure that we're drawing all the right resources from all parts of the council. So it's not just the responsibility of a single service. This is reliant on the entire organisation really pulling together. And making sure we use the resources that we have to best effect. So, it's an overarching principle which could be applied to any kind of project, be that environmental nuisance, be that cost of living, be it digital inequality. I'd say it's an overarching principle.
So I'm kind of coming at it. I'm not quite coming at it from the right angle then, but I'm almost there then. So to say a particular area of focus and just saying one issue, fly tipping, you would say that should be widened out, to a more general heading, if you like, and that would be one of the things, in amongst that. So for us as a scrutiny board, if everyone's agreed with me, for example, then we could say that would be a particular area of focus that we would want included.
Yeah, I think, like I said, we're at that kind of early formative stage. I think one of the big challenges the organisation's had for many years when I've been here is there's a huge range of priorities and everything's a priority, and actually we need to focus on resources. So how we actually say that is the area of focus we need to look at, be that scrutiny, be it cabinet, or be it via other means. And I think that's still to play out on this. So otherwise we run that risk of having priorities from a range of different meetings and suddenly, we're unable to meet them expectations perhaps. So part of that key principle I was saying, well, actually some things we might have to say no to because we just can't do everything. So what is it the organisation really wants to focus on? So the role of this is around whatever is defined by, senior management, by the corporate leadership team, by members, is that we make sure the resources are there to try and support that with the robust discussions with finance to make sure they're financed appropriately. It's pulling together all that kind of information. So the governance is going to be a key part because that essentially will entail what we're going to start, prioritising our work on. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm a bit clearer than I was before. Yeah.
All right, Victoria.
Thank you, Chair. I must admit, I'm finding the report. I mean, it's obviously a huge piece of work. It's going to be a huge piece of work, and I'm finding it quite sort of, because it's so overarching. It almost sort of becomes slightly vague, a little bit management speak, if you don't mind me saying. A lot of buzzwordy stuff, which is absolutely fine. You've got to start somewhere. So you're kind of giving us the what here, what you want to achieve. I am interested in the how and also the when. So what sort of timescales are we looking at to get these, you know, clearly it's going to be iterative. We're not looking at kind of getting it all set in stone in one go, but really just to give us a sense of what the structure of this work being done is going to look like and how long that's going to take.
Craig, Alan?
Well, I think, like we said, we don't want to keep referring back to it's formulative. So I think there's going to be some key milestones which will kind of indicate what this might look like. So I think if there's any changes to cabinet priorities in regards to the 100 days, etc., will there be any changes that come from a corporate peer review that might affect the vision priorities? I think they're key milestones, because what's defined in them processes is kind of going to inform us of the kind of direction of travel. So I don't believe the vision work, or not the vision, sorry, the peer review, if I'm right in thinking that's going to be February 2023. So, you know, we'll be working up what perhaps the governance looks like, but in terms of what those priorities may be that we want to work up and start refining all this work, then, you know, I don't want to commit to 2023 because it's not agreed that is a milestone, and the peer review will be it's very hard to say at this moment of time. We're just trying to get the kind of machinations in place to say, we're at recovery. We want to make sure we carry on with some of the momentum of change, which has been really positive. There's a whole range of pieces of work going on across the organisation. Some are cross-cutting, some are working independently, but they need to be drawn together. There's a huge piece of work on that, identifying of what those priorities are. But some of those priorities will most likely be informed by decisions at different levels, which are coming in the future. So timescales, I'd find that really hard at the moment because there's dependencies. And I think in terms of that report, this is a kind of a very brief highlight report to inform what's going on, but we need to start sort of refining what that's going to look like. So the governance work, working with ELT to try and bring some of these conversations together, so all these projects do work together rather than independently. It's iterative at the minute, so I would find it hard to commit on any kind of timescales at the minute, other than the known dependencies which will inform the report. And I probably made that clear as mud.
Yeah. Well, just picking up from that, if you don't mind, Chair. Is it there, just to get an idea of what sort of piece of work it is? Is it a standalone piece of work, or will it remain a live document? Is it something that is going to be constantly fed into over potentially years, or is it something that you're looking to produce something that is a blueprint?
Well, Alan, do you have a view on that? But my view is a blueprint.
So I can try and help, Chair. So in answer to Councillor Porritt's question, it will be live. The other thing is that this isn't necessarily about new work. This is about capturing the key priorities, and actually some of that will be current activity, and just testing that against the overall direction of travel, and just looking for. So if we go back to Councillor Kearney's example of fly tipping, and I know that's quite a kind of well, you would say on one level a service-specific issue, but in actual fact, it's probably not. It cuts across a number of services. So the whole approach of this programme is about looking at those things that we're doing, whether we're using our resources effectively, whether there are opportunities to have a kind of a broader involvement and a better answer to the question that's being posed. So some of that is about assembling work, reviewing work. If it was just about adding to, then we wouldn't be achieving what this is all about. This is about being clear about what the early, the medium term and the longer term priorities are, so that we focus our resource in the right places at the right time. Because say if we just continue to expand the work programme, then it'll fall over. But you're right, Councillor Porritt, from that then what we need to do is to stitch all of that together with key deadlines for when things will be delivered. And we can see when pieces of work will complete, when other pieces of work can come on stream because of the capacity to focus on those. So it is very much that kind of piecing together an overall programme of work which will remain live. It'll be dynamic, things will roll on, things will roll off, things will be achieved and ticked off, but things will change and have to adapt and respond to changing requirements. Does that help a bit?
Okay.
Yeah, thanks. Really helpful.
Right, I've got a bit of a queue now. I've got Councillor Dickinson first, I think.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, the language in the report was it's concern that I share with Councillor Porritt. I'm wondering if it might be helpful, without adding to too much of a workload, whether going forward and when you come back to see us again on this board, whether maybe a couple of case studies might be useful for us to have a look at, perhaps one that's a defined piece of work and perhaps one that's open-ended, so we can translate the overarching and holistic approach to what actually happens as a process, in terms of the actual nuts and bolts of what's happening. I don't know. It's just a suggestion. Whether or not if that's got any legs on it or not.
Okay, thank you. My auto queue's telling me that Mike, you're next in the queue.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm really nervous about this. I have to say, I'm a bit concerned that this is going to be a motherhood document. I'm also concerned that, which we have seen over the last couple of years, an overpromise and underdeliver. Primarily, not from any negative way of the overpromise, but actually it's because individuals want to do it, but then can't do it type activity. And we've seen it in a number of areas where reports have come back to scrutiny committees where time frames have not been met. And at the moment, I'm really just nervous that this is a really nice vision statement, motherhood document. I think Councillor Porritt probably said it better than myself. And there's no meat on it. And I think if we're going to scrutinise this document, there's nothing to scrutinise, really. We can all agree with these statements and these principles, but it's the real meat of it that needs to be attacked. And I was a bit nervous when there was no timeframes, there was no milestones agreed to it. Are we talking about 2028, 2030, 2050? When are we talking about that we're going to see some palpable results from this? And I think also we need to consider, and I think we've missed it with residents, is that we need, I hear what you were saying, Craig, but have we actually gone out and actually spoken to residents and understood what they want to get out of this? And are our aims and objectives in line with what they want? I'm not really going at this point with much confidence in this. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah,
well, thank you. Yeah, I'll let you deal with that one, Craig. I mean, I see where you're coming from, Mike, and it's part reflective of what we've all said. But just in defence, this paper is in its infancy, I understand. And hopefully there'll be some more flesh going onto it. But I'll let you finish that one off, Craig.
Yeah, I mean, I'd probably suggest it's probably premature for this paper to come at this stage, if I was to be honest. And a lot of this is reliant on, like I said, some of what the council, what are some of the key priorities are. So some of the work today around the sort of special priority areas around North Halifax, there's huge amounts of work going there around looking at what resident need is in that area, what we're looking at from a digital point of view, what we're looking at from inequality point of view. So this is around a framework of making sure that to support the organisation to make those priorities kind of happen. So we are reliant on some other major pieces of work in the council around the kind of governance around this, and all this is really emerging. So I would completely agree there isn't the meat on this, because that is not work that's being done yet, and that is work that we want to build up. So this is a document that is much more of a kind of a description with ideas of what's going to happen going forward, whereas at the moment this is it's a briefing note to advise on what we're looking at. So absolutely fair point, Councillor Barnes. And that's something we're working on, but I think it probably was premature to bring it at this stage, because I think there's a much more work to do.
Yeah, thank you. David Curtin, I think you're next.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Like a bit similar question to like Councillor Cairns mentioned there about fly tipping. One thing that's been a major problem right across the borough in recent times, and how this will fit in with with what I'm suggesting here, and that's the traveller situation, which has been a major problem, certainly in my ward and right across the borough, and it cuts across many services, and how this will fit into this particular project.
Did
you get that, Chair?
I think you're cracking up a bit there, David. Can you just? Did you
get the drift of it?
Yeah, I think we did. Yeah, it just looks like you're on rewind or fast forward or something. Have you finished?
Yes, I have. Yeah.
No, that's all right. No, that's fine. We did get what you said, I think, but I just want to make sure you finish for I move on. Okay.
Yeah,
Megan,
I mean the issue that I mentioned. Can you hear me, Chair?
I can now. Yes.
Can you hear me?
Can everybody hear me? I think everybody can hear.
Yeah,
you
the
now.
issue that I mentioned were very similar to Councillor Cairns mentioned about the fly tipping situation. A major problem that we've had, certainly in my ward and across the borough lately, is the traveller situation, which cuts across all services, and how this will fit into the asset systems. I wonder if anybody could just make any comments on that.
I mean, I would, again, sort of going back to the organisation as a whole needs to define what those priorities are. And this is a framework to help support deliver them priorities. So some of the principles being around making sure our data's there, making sure that, we use that information effectively, intervening, root cause problems. So the principles should be applied to whatever the organisation defines as its core priorities. So this isn't a list of priorities of what the council is going to deliver. This is a framework to ensure that resources, budgets, etc., are there to help support those priorities. So if travellers, environmental nuisance, financial inequality are defined as those are the big ticket issues that we're going to deal with in the next 2 years, these are principles to help define how we get to the position that we make sure those resources are able to do it. So hopefully, not have officers, committing to things that can't be done because the finance isn't there or the resources aren't there. Part of this group is around, okay, we have a priority around travellers or environmental nuisance. How on earth do we make sure the budgets exist and the resources exist? So let's not commit to deliverables when they're not in place. This is a framework to try and ensure that before we get to that stage of missing milestones, that the project is fully costed, fully resourced, and fully committed to from the top of the organisation to the bottom. So it's not a defined list of priorities, it's the framework to help us make sure that we don't get to the position where we're missing milestones and deliverables. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's fine. Thanks, Craig.
Thank you.
That's great. Megan, have you still got your hand up?
Yeah, yes, I have.
Yeah, okay.
And I'm not even on mute. I have what is it? Concerns about this.
We've got vision and sound as well. Yeah, sorry, carry on. Yeah.
Thanks, Chair. I mean, where do members come in with this? Or are we in a situation where lots and lots of work concerned, and then it goes to Cabinet and then it goes to us? Because I think one thing is very clear, that members around the table here, it's that table, is it? But members who would be around the table here sound concerned, and I think would like to take part in some of the things that are going to happen. That's all I've got to say, Peter.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I think the actual recommendations are, we know the report, well, fair enough, but it also says make recommendations on the work, follow the information it receives. So if you think, or if anybody that is thinks you want to make a recommendations at this stage to be used as guidance in the future, well, we're happy, we can do that. So if you want to think about anything you particularly want to see, or some direction you might want to be included, perhaps you could raise it. In the meantime, Sophie, have you got something to say? Have you still got your hand up?
I do, Chair. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I have to entirely agree with Councillor Barnes on this. I was hoping to hear tonight, with the paper and the project being in such its infancy, I was hoping to hear about the approach, and I'll come on to a recommendation which I would like to propose, Chair. It doesn't fill me with if you had a business, for instance, you wouldn't assume what your customers want. You would go out and do your soft, your hard market testing. You would ask people what they want so you can deliver and design your services around that. And I just feel that that is totally missing from what I've heard. I'd like to make that as a recommendation, Chair, if I may, that is woven through the approach going forward, so that when we do have some more meat on the bones, we can scrutinise that, and hopefully that will be there throughout.
So what in brief, what recommendation are you making? That we consult the public, we consult the public as part of this exercise, or something to that? Something
Yeah,
like that.
I think that needs to be fundamental to the approach. It needs to be, of course, you have to take into account your governance, your employees, your usual top-down stuff. But the golden thread through this is surely the council is there to deliver services for people. Let's ask people what they want to see and how they want to receive those services. I think that's absolutely crucial.
Yeah, can I just come back on that? So the projects that will be defined by the council, so the inequalities, they're the kind of pieces of work where, absolutely quite rightly, the golden thread around that is the need of the customer. So some of the work we're doing, working with design services, is using design council standards around user-centered design, making sure the users at that. So that kind of thread should be in here to say this is how councils should be designing their services to the customer with that in mind. But the projects themselves that are the actual deliverables, then projects should have them within it. Yes, it should be within here, but that's not the corporate. This is the framework, and that should be telling all the services, yeah, this is how you should be designing, and absolutely that will be in there. But I think the point you're making is we've got to make sure that the programs of work that the council has agreed to be the priorities, that's got to be within that as well. So just
Chair, sorry to interrupt, and just to follow on on Councillor Whitaker's comment, if we look at the plans, approach and actions, we shall demonstrate we truly value our staff. Yeah, we are a listening organisation. Staff are empowered, staff are nurtured, developed and grown. We are a supportive, kind and caring organisation. I think if those are plans, approach and action, we shall demonstrate. What in that is that we shall actually deliver to residents. That's the bit that's missing. And I understand it's this is going to be a living, working document. I understand where it's going. My recommendation would be that, and I know we've got a huge work program and a couple of big things coming, but I think we need to be right on top of this, because this could blow out of all proportion and be an absolute huge rabbit hole that we go down. And I've just got some concerns on that it just needs to be really properly, tightly managed, effectively led through scrutiny, through members, as Councillor Swift so correctly pointed out. Thank you, Chair. Sorry for interrupting.
No, it's all right. No. I mean, if we want to make a recommendation, we need to agree on what that recommendation is. Now, from my understanding, is the focus seems to be we need really to make sure that what's developed is designed to deliver customer services that customer wants. Is that about where we are with this? So it's how we put that in a nutshell, really. That we would ask, what do you call it? PAS, passes it? Is that the short-term name for it? PAS. That PAS's focus is on designing something that delivers what residents want, but at the same time achieves other aspirations in the paper, such as staff requirements and systems and all the rest of it. I mean, is it something along those lines we're looking for? Because of prioritising what the priorities are rather than just putting a system in place that doesn't deliver what we want.
Yeah, well, it's about, so ensuring the focus of the document is around delivering to the customer and making sure the customer is involved in that process. And making sure that threads through to all the priorities that the council defines, to make sure that then principles are defined within every programme of work we do. So it's just to make sure that that's my interpretation there, which is kind of It's just not clearly defined in there, and it is, that's a real.
Can I briefly comment? So I think the point's well made. I think it's really helpful. What I would point members back to are the first.
Eric. I'm sure that's going to be a very good point, Alan.
Well, that's a bit profound.
Three key principles. It's equality about an evidence-based approach where we use our customer insights. So that's the insight we get from the users of our services to help.
Alan, we're having trouble with we're having trouble with you actually because you
direction. So now, whether we need to, we can have a look at that. But absolutely, this is about being resident focused, customer focused, building our services, designing our services to meet the requirements of our service users.
Right. Yeah. Well, thanks for that. We lost a bit of it. It's disjointed, but it must be the signal. But I think we got the gist of what you're saying. That you're actually agreeing with us, or agreeing with the panel. There needs to be some focus on residents' requirements, and delivery should be aimed at that. Is that what you're saying? That's what should be driving it. It should be
absolutely, Chair. Absolutely.
The end users driving it rather than it driving the end users. If you follow me.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So, because we can make a recommendation for PAS as it is, Sophie, you've sort of said you want to. I'm trying to think of the way of sort of ingraining it into the thought processes without making it a specific requirement.
I think, Chair, if I may, maybe that just needs clarifying within the approach rather than it being a formal recommendation from the board. It just lacks clarity about how that process is going to be informed. Is the assumption what residents, are we assuming what they want and this is what we're going to deliver? Are we actually asking them what they want so we can design that to deliver on those needs and wants?
Yeah, I mean
clarity.
Yeah, I think we need clarity. I think it's probably a bit early to make recommendations because we don't want to stifle it by making restrictive recommendations, but we want to make sure the direction of travel is the way we want it. So is everyone happy to sort of bear in mind?
Sorry, Chair, I've had my hand up for quite a while.
Really take on board what we've said and make sure that the theme running through is along the lines of what we all agree that it needs to be resident focused. Is everybody happy with that kind of approach?
Well, I've had my hand up for a while. Probably as well.
Sorry, Stu, I can't say that's why I hate doing Zoom meetings. I can't see your hand. Sorry.
No, if we're looking for recommendations, so just kind of going back to the very beginning of it, it's got like background and it says the PAS programme brings together, and it's singular, it's on its own, it says the learning that is taking place. So I mean, possibly that was explained before I was a councillor, I don't know. But we've read through this and we've probably all read it and thought, yeah, that sounds really good. But what's become clear is that we don't know. It's still to be decided what priorities are going to actually be sort of like looked at through this new way of working or whatever. For me, I would want it to come back to this committee once, like a few priorities have been decided upon.
I think
then be told, right, this is how this is going to apply to this. That's how it's going to apply to this. Do you know what I mean?
I know what you mean. I'm not sure that the purpose of this document is to look at, I could be wrong, at specific areas. It's to look at a sort of a way of working to deliver what residents want rather than looking at individuals. They've got something, you could say, well, it needs to include planning, fly tipping, needs to include all the part. There'll be so much you need to be specific about that they should cover. I don't think we could possibly do that. But it's more about how it's delivered, and is it delivered to the standard and the way people want it delivered, rather than the specifics. I don't think you could deal with. Craig could speak for himself and so on, but I don't think you could deal with specific things like that, could you? would that make it more of a cumbersome document?
I think, I mean,
I thought I got it, but now I don't. I'm back in the place where I don't get it. It's like, well, what's the point of it? Like, because I mean, the priorities of the council will probably be the same before and after this. So if this is a new approach to the way that we do what the council does, then I suppose then it's more understandable. But then it's like, could we be biting off more than we could chew, applying this way of working to everything that the council prioritises? I'm really sort of scratching my head now. Going,
I should let Alan. I should let Alan and Craig answer themselves. All I'm saying is this is about how we deliver things and what we're delivering, and is it what people want us to deliver, rather than itemising each specific service separately and how each one should be delivered. I mean, because that could be a very, very lengthy document. But I mean, if Craig wants to speak for himself rather than me speak for him.
Sure, if I may, and forgive me, I think I'm being told that I'm breaking up badly, so I don't know whether you'll hear what I'm about to say. The points that have been made about biting off more than we can chew, trying to do too much, over-promising and under-delivering, those are exactly the issues that we're trying to tackle here. This is about looking at what our ambitions are, looking at what our resources are that we have available to us, and then making sure that we don't overcommit and overpromise in terms of the things that we focus on. You're right. Underpinning all of that has to be a resident focus. This has to be about improving services to our residents. But what as has been said tonight, one of the concerns that some of the members have is we've got a track record of trying to do too much, too quickly, without sufficient resource, which means that people get disappointed because we're not able to deliver what we've said we'll deliver. This is about undoing all of that and taking a much more measured and considered approach. So we focus on the key priorities, the key areas of work that mean the most to our residents, and we deliver the things that we say we're going to deliver in the time that we say we're going to deliver them. That's what this is all about.
Fine. I've got a draft recommendation as such from Mike Lodge here. Has everybody seen it on the screen? It says, the recommendation is the focus of the past project should be on delivering the services that people want and need. The Scrutiny Board wishes to receive regular updates on the past project. Is everybody okay with something like that?
Chair, I think you've got questions from Councillor Bellinger and Councillor Swift before we come to that. Sorry.
Well, I'll take Councillor Bellinger and Councillor Swift, and then we'll go back to the recommendation. Paul.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to sort of like summarise for myself, really, because I think that some members tonight have been a little bit harsh on our officers, to be quite honest. And I think that I'm not saying there's a lack of understanding, but there's a lot to take in from this. And I see this as a bit of a Bible of best practice that we're actually putting together here to ensure that we run more efficiently as an authority later on down the line, that we get better at doing the things that we're already doing to make those services more efficient and effective for the residents within Calderdale. Am I right in saying that, Craig, Alan? Is that what we're actually trying to do? Yeah.
I think Alan summed it up quite well from his previous point, and everything that's been said is absolutely valid. And Scrutiny, we're here to to take that feedback and make sure that they are put into the document to make sure that's there. So in terms of it's about making sure we're not biting off more we can chew, because that's been a challenge for the organisation for a long time, and we need to really focus our resources effectively. So that, again, that's that framework about how we do that, and where we do that for, because the user-centred need is absolutely core to it. So yeah, absolutely, we need to make that much more clear, and that's totally accept that. But yeah,
I guess it's something that will constantly evolve as things change as well within the authority. We'll always need updating and improving as we make decisions ourselves throughout the authority.
Yeah, I mean, this is not the finished article. Like we said, we started from a COVID recovery point of view. There was lots of change from from a cultural, from a technical, and the people point of view. We're kind of beyond that recovery phase now. We've got momentum in certain areas, and then we've got areas where we know we've got the challenge, and it's about how we make sure that, you know, we support the organisation to deliver, you know, the quality service to the customer. So it's how that framework kind of works. And quite rightly, you know, there's some points made there where we do need to be more clear. But like I said, this is the very first document around this. It's almost a briefing note as opposed to a, you know, the full document which outlines where we're going, what we're doing, the timescales, etc. It's a very, very early document just to indicate what the kind of principles were. But you know, all feedback will be taken on, and you know, there's certain areas that we definitely need to just make more clear.
Yeah, and I get that. I think I would probably agree with what Chair's just said about Mike's suggestion as well. Oh yeah, I'll be with that.
Right. Well, thanks, Paul. I've got Megan Swift and Dan Sutherland, and I'm going to wrap it up back to the recommendation, if that's all right. Megan.
Thank you, Chair. If we're going to try to consult with residents, etc., have we any idea what the timescale is going to be? Because if we haven't, you know, if we were going to have it for next year, we could put the motion, or whatever we want to call it, on the back of council tax bills, because they go to nearly everybody, and we get to them then. But if we're hoping to do it in the next, you know, next month, so I don't know how you get to them.
But I mean, we do. I think the point's been made. We don't know what the timescales are, but I mean, I'll let Alan or Craig take that one.
Yeah, it's this distinction again, which I know is a bit nebulous, and it's proving unhelpful tonight. But it's this distinction between this work is about coordinating overall activity. It's not about defining the specific activity. It's about the council reviewing its approach to a range of different developments that it's considering undertaking, and taking a view about which ones are a priority and therefore require a focus and the resources allocated, and which ones, when we run out of resource, fall below the line and therefore aren't a priority at this stage, but might be a priority further down the line or at another point. So it's almost a kind of a mapping exercise. So it's not the definition of the specific pieces of work themselves. This is about the overall approach to make sure that we don't get into a situation where we've got different parts of the organisation agreeing different pieces of work that don't connect to one another, and that count the same resource 2 and 3 and 4 times. So we're using the same people for things that they're possibly not aware of. And it's about stitching that together so we've got a much more coherent set of arrangements, so that we know that once we commit resource, it's understood, it's available, and it will deliver. And as I say, going back to the earlier points I've made several times, that we don't continue to disappoint through non-delivery, over-promising, under-delivering, etc. So this is more about the approach than the specific streams of work. The specific streams of work, when we're working with residents, with customers, with users, we need to engage with the users as part of that process. This isn't about kind of controlling that. This is about the overall kind of approach and framework that Craig's referred to a few times tonight.
Thanks, Nath. I think the point is, though, I mean, you know, thanks for what you said, that we need to consider what users want, which I think is, you know, everybody's mind here, that we design a system that's designed for what the council wants, not what the customer wants. Anyway, Dan, do you want to make a point?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, we've managed to give a lot of focus to what is a relatively quite short and briefing note. That doesn't really give you much information. I do think we've given the officers a slightly hard time here, because what I'm reading is that they're wanting to effectively create a talking group with officers across directorates where they can try and consider issues and drive internal change. And I think it is, or my reading is that it's primarily focused on that sort of internal change, making sure that all the bits that you need perhaps more behind the scenes rather than on the front lines, making sure you've got the people where you need to and the resources where you need to. So I wouldn't want to overly burden, you know, a new group coming up that they have to go out to publicly consult on everything, because on the topics that are relevant, those should be happening. And perhaps that's something we need to really recognise as a principle, that any changes that are going to affect, you know, the general public will be consulted upon. But if it's about our internal workings, I think we need a group that can be a bit more lean and a bit more quick and try and push through some change without being weighed down too heavily. Obviously, reporting back that change to us. But I think the officers need a bit of flexibility to to see what they can do and see what the future is going to bring.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. I think you're right. I think what the point's been made though is, if we put a new framework in place, one of the things that should be considered, not necessarily consulting on at this stage, but considered, is the prime focus of this is service delivery to customers. That's all we're saying, I think. So the recommendation that's been suggested, all that says is that the thread throughout the whole of this thing should be making sure that we're delivering what customers want, not what the council thinks they want. Is everybody sort of on board with that approach? Has everybody read the recommendation, by the way? It's in the chat, I think. Has it gone to everybody or just to me?
I think I'd just like to just put that bit of support around members say that customer thread is definitely part of a number of the projects going on across the council. And part of my ongoing framework around some of our work is around using design council standards. So it's definitely something that has just been ignored. It's definitely something that has been, looked at through many parts of the council. Something that we want to make sure is through it all. So it's just to reassure that it's not just being swept under the carpet. It's definitely there, and totally recognise that that needs to be made more clear as this document kind of evolves. As in that's the core part.
Chair, can I say, Craig? I think we all recognise that, and we all understand that. I just think if we're looking at a framework document that sits over everything that the council is going to do, I think it's important in that framework document it states something like that.
Yeah, and
because if that's the document that in 3 years' time someone points back and says that's the framework I use, that there, and it doesn't mention that, I think if
no, totally recognise. Thanks for the feedback.
Right. So I'll ask again. Is everybody happy with this recommendation? Right, is everybody happy with it? You've seen it, it's on the screen. Can I suggest we adopt that? I mean, it's not what you call a stringent recommendation. It's just if something's been designed to deliver services, it needs to be recorded that we look at it. We want the customer focus to be at the forefront of people's minds while they're drawing this up. That's all it's saying, really. It's not binding anybody to specific ways of how they structure this the new structure, as it were. So everybody's okay with that? Anybody against that? Can we consider that agreed then, please? Thank you very much. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. That's a lively debate. I think Zora made the right decision. Obviously, she's good at delegating, obviously. No, I mean, to be fair to her, she said no choice. So thanks, everybody. Can we move on now to the cost of living review? I mean, it's not a review as such. This is just about the process of looking at it. I think everyone's had a chance to read it. It's mainly about how the group is structured rather than the actual contents of what's being done, because that was in the terms of reference. I've had a word with Mike about it. We think there's probably too many. I mean, thanks for volunteering, everybody. I think there's probably far too many volunteers on that. Because, I mean, if you're having a meeting, you don't want too many people there because they're hard to arrange. So what I'm suggesting is we have one member from Adults Health and Social Care. So that could be, you're on both, Mike, are you? You're on S&P and Adults Health. So we could have Councillor Durrans and Councillor Hutchinson, or Councillor Hutchinson. One from CYP. I think there only is one from CYP anyway. Two from S&P. So that could be Mike Barnes and Stuart Carney. And we need two from Place. Well, we've got Councillor Dickinson, but we need one other volunteer from the Conservative Party, because there's only one out of sort of 9 people there. There's 8 people there. So we'll try and recruit somebody else. But I mean, I'm open to views, but I just think it's a bit cumbersome, the number of people that put their hand up to join it. Anybody got any views on differences of opinion or anything you'd like to say? Or tell me to shut up, or what am I doing? Stuart.
Would this delay it getting formed if you were going to go out to your group and say we only got one volunteer, who else is interested?
Well, I think we have been out, but the thing is, some can't do it because it's during the day and they're working. And I think it might have been, I don't know why it's worked out like that, but we'll rectify it. But if we do that, we'll have 6 people, which I think is more than enough for a working group, don't you? I mean, if you have too many, you can't get a meeting. If you want continuity, you want to see people there all the time, I think. I mean, I'll throw it open, but that's my personal view. I don't see these voices of dissent here. Is everybody happy with that? Mike? I mean, Mike.
Lodge.
Lodge, that is, not right.
Yeah, I think if I may, Chair, I mean, I think the number of volunteers we've got is too many. I mean, it's best practice if you appoint to it, but if you don't appoint and you don't appoint the last member, we can do that outside the meeting and just get it ratified later on. We don't have to be too precise about all this, I don't think.
Well, we'll sort it out between us this week, or this week or next week. It won't be left in abeyance, but I think it's been a lack of communication problem. So we'll get that rectified. Because, I mean, actually, what we're talking isn't particularly a political matter, but it's basically also a bit of political balance in there, which I think everyone accepts that, don't they? Right, okay, Mike, if you can, you and I discuss that, we'll come back with something. And we'll discuss it with Regan because he'll be probably chairing the next meeting.
Councillor Dickinson does have his hand up. I don't know if it's
Is he there? Sorry, Regan, I can't.
Yeah, back in the room. I did actually write to the other Conservative members of the different boards across the piece to see who was available, and big fat zero coming back. Really, that's the only thing I was going to mention.
Right, okay, well, we'll have to have a look at that. If needs be, yours truly will do it.
Yes, see if we can bully someone or something, I don't know.
Well, yeah, I think I've probably got bully written all over me. Right, okay, we'll sort that. Stuart, have you got your hand up? Is that just a note? Right, okay. Is everybody happy then? We'll when we've done it, we'll send out an email confirming what we're doing and how it's being done. But it's not a great deal different. It's just want to make the numbers a bit more representative of the scrutiny committees and the political balance.
Chair, we've got a Labour group meeting tomorrow night. I'll try and put it on the agenda and we'll narrow it down to hour 3.
Right, is that all right? Yeah, that's kind of you. Thanks very much for helping with that. Lauren, you trying to speak to me, Lauren, through the ether there? No. Right.
I think she's dropped out.
No, she must have done. Yeah, she'll move on.
She has, Chair. She's dropped out.
I'm just dragging this out unnecessarily, answer there. Right, we're on the work programme. Looks pretty busy. Mike, do you want to talk us through this?
As much as I can remember what Lauren instructed me to say earlier on, Chair. The item down for August on cabinet priorities was based on an assumption that the cabinet was going to have a discussion like it did last year, early in the year. We now don't think that's going to happen in time for you to have the discussion in August. So Lauren is in conversation by email with Councillor Tim Swift about the timing of that item, but it won't be feasible for August. And I think that the corporate performance report, Lauren is suggesting we bring forward to replace that item, because that has been through cabinet now, so that could come to the next meeting, subject to the people who need to present it being available. So basically, that's bringing corporate performance forward and moving council priorities back a month.
Right. Okay.
I think that was all that Lauren said to me earlier on.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Anybody got anything else they want to put on here? Although it's up to reading, right? Not me. Well, sorry, subject to in case Mr. Hughes is listening in.
Chair,
Yeah.
I know you were. I know Councillor Dickinson will be chair, but I think I would just like to flag up with members the political engagement on the 26th of October. I think that's a good time for it, because obviously that's enough time for lead-in. But I think it is imperative that we look at that beforehand, that members actually think about that beforehand, because that's a big thing in regard to how we engage with the residents to get them out to vote and be actively involved. So, but I just wanted to flag that up. I think that's a good piece of work, but I think we just need to ourselves as individuals and maybe as groups have a think about that before the meeting.
No, I think you're right. No, absolutely right. Yeah. I mean, are we doing the internal paper for that, Mike? For this particular engagement, is it something that we're going to have to? Is it something for us to look at with substance, or is it a discussion that's proposed?
Well, Lauren is doing some preparatory work on it, right, and looking at people from other than just council officers to report. So I know she's made contact with both Craig Whittaker and Holly Lynch, who've both replied saying the time of the meeting isn't great for them because they'll be in London, but they are interested in having some input to the discussion. And Lauren has also, I believe, made contact, or is in the process of making contact with the Youth Council as well to get their perception on things. So I think the answer is yes, there will be some work done by Lauren and me beforehand to help stimulate discussion amongst members.
Well, yeah, I mean, even though the meeting's not till the 26th, we can have. There's no reason if it can be done. Why the paper can't go out a month before that, is there? Even if we don't. Even if we don't have it scrubbed till, there's no point holding it back just because it's not on the. And I've just mentioned that I don't want to make work for Lauren. I mean, I don't want to discuss her in her absence. Make her when she's not here to defend herself. So yeah, okay, Mike. Yeah, that's a good point. Is that? Yeah,
but we can get that. We could get a sort of something that was like a discussion paper rather than a formal report out. Well before get comments back from members to feed into that process before we get into the meeting in October.
Okay, that's fine. Any more comments from anybody about the work programme? Quite a lot on there, isn't there, already? You all right with it, Regan? No, the mute.
Yes, sorry. I was hoping my spacebar would unmute me, but it didn't respond. I'm glad I've had these two meetings that I've sat in on to try to get up to speed, and I'm afraid I will be continuing to get up to speed as chair. So I'm probably going to need a bit of babysitting till I get to grips with it properly. What I can see, everything seems to be in order.
Yeah. Well, we have discussed it before, and we put it together. It hasn't been just thrown together, so there is some structure in it. So yeah, hopefully it'll be all right.
Yeah.
Right, everybody, is that okay? If everybody's all right with that, well, I think that's the end of the meeting, isn't it? Janet, unless you.
Janet's waving about.
Sorry,
Janet, you're on mute.
No, Janet.
To clarify, we are still waiting for council, so you've got to wait to council to appoint to the scrutiny board and also to appoint the chair for this scrutiny board.
No, I realise that, yeah.
Yeah,
I was
yeah, but
reminded that.
it's just been mentioned a couple of times as though it's a fait accompli. Until council ratifies it, we can't.
No, it's terminology. It's just terminology. I agree.
Yeah.
No, I agree. I've had my knuckles wrapped twice for that already.
Yeah. It's just clarification, Chair.
Oh, no, that's all right. No, sorry, no worries.
Yeah, I'm just a non-playing member of the band at the moment.
Yeah. Well, it's all my fault for cooking it up, isn't it? Really. Right. Okay. Thanks for that, Janet. I need to be kept straight occasionally. Actually appreciate it sometimes. Right. Well, thanks everybody. If everybody's okay, we'll call it an end to the meeting.
Janet, can you keep the meeting open, please? Because Councillor Barnes and I have got some adult social care business too.
I'll need to close down YouTube so that whatever you discuss.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. If you can just bear with me, please.